Wow, it's tough to follow these talks. I'm very humbled to be here. I'm going to thank Izal and his family 3 times for different reasons in this presentation. The first time is for inviting me and allowing me to speak personally and on behalf of a couple of companies that I represent here. So thank you. I'm going to discuss something a little bit different with you. There's like an introspective reflection on the unit that I served in the Army, and I served at up until about 4 days ago when they let me come and join this conference before I return. First, just a quick introduction. Up until October 7th, in my sort of previous life, I was a lawyer and a partner at one of Israel's largest law firms, Arnon Tadmor Levy. I joined in 2008. Saul's book was a big inspiration, very influential on my career, and many thanks to that book as well. I sort of just wanted to work with startups, and that's all I did. Most corporate lawyers will like to sort of diversify into some VC work, some acquirer side logos, big logos. I've only worked with startups, 500 companies from inception through to wherever they got to, and I'm proud of every single one of them, the unicorns and the ones that closed. They'll come back stronger. I tried to sort of venture out myself and vicariously live through some partnerships with my firm. First, it started with founderrunway.com, which is a content platform for entrepreneurs in Israel. It's in English, and I think that entrepreneurs all over the world can use it. And finally, 3 years ago, convinced my firm, and very proud that they partnered with me and my partner Moshe Levin, who's a veteran of the Israeli tech industry, to found Consiglieri. Consiglieri realizes that when you think of a startup, before it reaches profitability, before it becomes a Walmart or a Teva, when you think about that company, when it's always reaching its runway, it goes through certain events over its life cycle, 5 or 6 events, strategic junctures that take between 4 to 9 months. And for that specific company, those events are singular in nature. They will never repeat the same way. The first 6 months from idea to term sheet, the first time you raise from a group of angels and have to sort of attract them with your vision, the first time you raise from a VC and have to show VC metrics, the first time a startup buys a startup, and certainly the first time that a startup gets sold or has big secondaries or an IPO, those events are singular in that company's life cycle. But guess what we lawyers know? They repeat themselves thousands of times almost the same way. What Consiglieri does is it takes a trusted confidant, a veteran of the industry, does not necessarily have to be a lawyer, can be a venture capitalist or an ex-chairman of multiple boards or a serial entrepreneur, and that person manages the entire strategic transaction and all of the service providers involved, because whilst the founders should be expected to be unique and successful in their product development and team building and in their reach to the market, in their go-to-market, they cannot be expected to manage such a transaction to an optimal result, because they will only have managed it once in their careers, max about 4 or 5 if they're repeat entrepreneurs. And that's what Consiglieri does. We've been doing that for 3 years, and we've achieved over $4 million in revenues just trying to test out our methods. Consiglieri has evolved into ARC, but I'll tell you about ARC at the end of this presentation. The second reason I want to thank Izal is that I was deeply depressed on October 7th and October 8th. I was not able to get out of my bed. I'd been released from my unit already for 4 years. My unit is a highly technological unit, and I was rendered technologically obsolete at the age of 37. And I didn't know what to do. My wife was handling the kids perfectly, and I just stayed in bed, which I think happened to a lot of us. Felt ashamed, felt a failure, and didn't feel like I could contribute probably well enough. And on the morning of October 9th, I opened my Facebook for some doom scrolling, and I saw the worst picture I could have seen, which was Izal's post of Noni's death. And I know Izal, I've been following him through his venture capital career and his political career. I admire him, and that one really hit home. And the fact that he chose to share it with the public called me to action as well. And I called my unit, and I asked them to re-enlist, and they let me re-enlist. And when I re-enlisted, I've been there ever since, up until I came here, I saw something spectacular. I saw that actually I was an entrepreneur in January 2001 when I joined this unit. And actually, this unit is the most successful startup I was ever a part of. And I get a chance to reflect at that career now and tell you the story of my unit in startup terms. So, Zik. I couldn't share this name with you up until about August 2022. It started with an idea by Ehud Barak that Israel's army will forever be too small to meet its enemies, and therefore Israel must act within the confines of a small and smart army that prioritizes collaboration between the different forces, the ground forces, the Navy, the Air Force, the intelligence, etc. That was the idea, and then started ideation. Now, the IDF developed some tech, but let's say that we use the tech transfer office from Elbit Vision Systems, Tadiran, and other great companies. And we received some technology, which is the nature of many startups, by the way, and we tried to solve a pain with it. But here's a folly. We were solving for a previous pain. Now, if you think about Israel's history, Israel's most recent major pain were not the suicide bombings or the Intifada. It was the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The prospect of having to rely on miracles revolving around one tank captain opposite hundreds of enemy tanks still scared the crap out of all of us. And we were hoping that unmanned airborne vehicles with smart ammunition could give us an advantage over that enemy. And we were preparing many PowerPoint presentations for that vision. But what we were doing was we were solving for a previous pain instead of foreseeing a future pain. And that rendered my unit a unit forever to be in R&D and never to meet the market. Many of the soldiers in my unit, all of them are ex-pilot corps soldiers like myself who were eliminated early on from the course. We're sort of getting bored. We're not meeting the market, especially when the second Intifada started. I mean, we did have some POCs. We put our laser on some houses a few times in 2001, but that lasted only 2 months. When the second Intifada started, we really started feeling out of whack. We weren't doing anything. We were just working towards a war with Syria or Egypt that would never come. But we did get to do a joint venture, which I thought it would be wise to mention here. I was a corporal, and Elbit asked us to help them sell the technology to the UK Army. We had 20 two-star generals visit, and I received honorary major ranks because I knew some English from Australia. Came up with some definitions like GFC, ground control station, GCS, that's right, and just other terms, presented it to the UK military, and that was sold for about $8 billion under the term Project Watchkeeper. You can search it on Wikipedia now. They won't mention me by my major ranks. During the second Intifada, we pivoted. One morning in 2003, I was woken up at 4 a.m. just before I was released from the army and sent to the south. I didn't know what I was there for, but we basically attached a trolley to an unmanned buggy, and we tested out our first non-anti-tank munitions and ability to follow cars and not tanks. This was in 2003. And from the moment we did that, we've become the most active unit in the Israeli army, just that small pivot. We also have another pivot, but that's confidential, and we'll talk about it at a different time. In 2004, we had some traction. We were involved in probably every major Israeli mission. I won't say what they were during those years, to sort of bring the second Intifada to a close. And in 2006, I came to my first major reserves duty in the Second Lebanon War, where I served for 60 days. There, I also thought of Saul's book, because that was the first time in my unit that reservists, who were not officers, showed up at the unit and were being retrained by the young officers in the unit, but also were able to question their reason inside the truck in order to minimize, specifically to minimize, the damage to civilians and uninvolved persons in the conflict. So I think that's very interesting. It comes to fruition in our unit. In 2005, they wanted to merge our unit from the artillery corps with a flight squadron, but we proved ourselves in 2006. 2009, in Operation Cast Lead, we grew significantly. In 2014, we matured and were used in Operation Protective Edge to help all of our soldiers on the ground and not just locate targets in the field. And in 2023, my unit has been the first responder in the south in terms of the armed UAVs. And our officers have been working 24/7 since, and I can't wait to get back. And in that sense, it's an exit. We're used by the entire army, and we're used to do good, by the way, as difficult as it sounds. Which brings me back to ARC, and I'll use the last 30 seconds for that. As an entrepreneur who had this experience with my unit, we're now looking to reshape Consiglieri. What we want to do is turn Consiglieri from a consulting firm that has achieved a product market fit into a product platform that serves the veteran consultants inside the firm. We're obviously using the core technology in AI that was given to us circa October 2022 to do that, but we also include proprietary algorithms and know-how, and I'll be able to tell you all about that later. The third reason I'm thanking Izar, and that's why I want to say, that's how I'd like to end, is actually for something he did well before October 7th. This is a person who was a venture capitalist and joined the political and public sphere at the peak of his career. And I really hope that many such people will do so in Israel after this war, because that is how we will prevent this cycle from recurring. Good, competent leaders giving it up at peak. And that's what I'd like to do as well, at least with 20-30% of my time. Thank you very much.